sir. Could you pretend to be my husband, just for one day?" The words hit like a slammed door. Caleb Turner, 39, froze with a sack of horse feed on his shoulder as morning light stretched long shadows over cracked sidewalks in downtown Farrell, Montana. Behind him stood a white woman, mid-30s, hair whipped by wind, heels scuffed, fear written plain on her face. Her coat looked worn thin. Both hands shook around a child's backpack. She looked like sleep hadn't found her in days. Caleb blinked. "What?" "I know it's insane," she rushed, eyes flicking toward the street like it could bite. "But please, just today. If that man sees me alone again, he'll take my daughter." Caleb followed her stare. A government sedan waited across the road, engine quiet, presence loud. Beside it stood a man in a dark trench coat, clipboard in hand, scanning the block like the ending was already decided. Caleb's first instinct was distance. This wasn't his mess. He was a woodcarver, a black man in a mostly white town, who'd learned trouble clung harder than it let go. "I think you've got the wrong guy," Caleb said softly, shifting the strap on his shoulder. "No," she whispered, shaking her head fast. "I saw you outside the cafe, how you looked at that little boy begging. You didn't step around him. You didn't look away." "My name's Rachel," she added, voice cracking. "My daughter is Harper. She's 6. Her eyes shone with raw panic. "Just walk me across the street like we belong to each other. That's all I need. One day, one safe day." The trenchcoat man turned, spotted them, and started walking over. Something lit in Caleb's gut, a heat he hadn't felt in years. "I'm Caleb Turner," he said, calm as carved cedar. He stepped closer. "Take my arm." Rachel inhaled sharply, then obeyed. They crossed like partners who'd done it 100 times, steady, familiar, practiced. The agent cut in halfway. "Ma'am, you were scheduled for an evaluation at 10. You missed it." Rachel's throat locked. Caleb gave her arm a gentle squeeze, then faced the man. "She didn't miss anything," Caleb said. "We're together now." The agent's brows tightened. "And you are?" Caleb didn't blink. "Her husband." He let the words sit heavy. "We've had a rough stretch, but I'm taking her and the child home today." The agent's eyes sharpened. "You're not listed, no license, no shared address." Caleb sighed, shifting the feed bag like it was nothing. "We don't live by paperwork. I built our place up the mountain with my own hands. You want proof? Come see it." A small face appeared in the sedan's back window. Big blue eyes, a stuffed rabbit held like a shield. The agent paused, then clicked his pen. "I'll be following up. Don't disappear." Caleb's voice stayed even. "We won't." The agent stepped aside, but his stare lingered. The moment they reached the sidewalk, the car door flew open, and Harper ran straight into her mother's arms. "Mama!" Rachel dropped, hugging her tight, shaking like she'd been holding her breath for miles. Harper peeked at Caleb, wary, exhausted, curious, all at once. "Who's he?" Harper asked. Rachel looked up, tears trembling on her lashes. Her voice came out steady anyway. "That's Daddy." Harper tilted her head, then slowly offered her hand. Caleb stared, surprised by the trust in that tiny gesture, then took it like it mattered. If this hit your heart, leave a comment. Have you ever met someone for just one day, then everything changed? Like the video if you believe small kindness can pull someone back from the edge. And subscribe for more stories where goodness still fights to exist. An hour later, Caleb's weathered red truck climbed the mountain road, groaning around bends. The feed sack rolled in the bed. Wind whistled through a cracked window. Harper sat between them, humming a tune nobody recognized. Rachel stayed quiet, holding her daughter close, watching Caleb like he might vanish. When the cabin appeared, tucked under tall pines, chimney smoking, woodpile stacked neat, Harper whispered, "It smells like cedar." Caleb nodded. "Because it is." They parked. Caleb opened the door for them. Rachel hesitated like the threshold might trigger the whole world. "You really live alone up here?" she asked. Caleb's mouth twitched. "Lived," he corrected. "Until now, I guess." Inside, the fire chased October's bite away. Pine walls, a stone hearth, shelves he'd built, a table worn smooth by his hands. Simple, but solid as truth. Harper climbed onto the couch and curled around her rabbit. Caleb pointed down the hall. "Take the bedroom. Let her have the bed. I'll sleep on the floor if I need to." Rachel shook her head, overwhelmed. "You've done too much." Caleb met her eyes. "Then let me do a little more." That night, with the fire low and wind whispering against the cabin, Rachel sat at the table with warm milk, hands still trembling. "Why did you help me?" she asked. Caleb watched embers glow. "You said you needed someone to pretend. I used to pretend all the time. Pretend I was fine. Pretend grief didn't hollow me out." Rachel's expression softened, but she didn't push. Caleb's voice stayed gentle. "You don't have to explain everything tonight." He paused, then added, "But you also don't have to run anymore." Rachel swallowed hard. "Just one day," she whispered. Caleb turned toward her. "We'll see about that." Before sunrise, Caleb stirred from the floor, back aching from hard boards, but he didn't complain. It had been years since anyone shared his roof, let alone a woman and a child. The hearth held only faint embers. He rebuilt the fire quietly, practiced and careful. Rachel and Harper slept on the pull-out couch beneath an old patchwork quilt, his grandmother's. Harper's arm draped over her mother's chest, Rabbit tucked under her chin like a promise. They looked like they belonged. Caleb ground coffee with a hand mill, letting the rhythm steady his thoughts. A soft sound behind him. Rachel sat up slowly, hair messy, eyes rimmed red, with the kind of tired that sinks into bones. She tightened the quilt around her shoulders. "Morning," she said. Caleb nodded. "Coffee's almost ready." She glanced at Harper. "She didn't wake once. That's rare." Caleb poured steaming water over the grounds, waiting. Rachel breathed in. "You weren't kidding," she murmured. "This place smells like cedar and quiet." He slid her a mug. "Most days that's all it is." She sipped carefully, then spoke smaller. "Thank you for yesterday." Caleb sat across from her. "I still don't know why I said yes." Rachel gave a tired little laugh. "Maybe we got desperate at the same time." Silence settled, wood popping, fire murmuring. Then Rachel spoke again. "Harper's father, he was never really around. I raised her alone." Caleb nodded, letting her choose the pace. "He died 3 years ago," Rachel added. "Not that he helped before that, but after he was gone I stopped running, until his brother found me." Caleb looked up. Rachel's jaw tightened. "Grant Harlow, Family Services. He says I lied, faked records, says I'm unfit. He wants her in a system," Rachel continued, voice shaking with anger. "Cold buildings, locked doors. She's already anxious. That would break her." Caleb's eyes stayed steady. "You didn't hurt her." Rachel hesitated. "I bent truths to keep her safe, moved around, used a friend's address, but I never neglected her. Never." Caleb leaned back, studying her like he was carving out the shape beneath the surface. "I don't trust the system either," he admitted. Rachel's shoulders eased a fraction. Caleb's tone turned firm. "But you pulled me into something I don't fully understand. If I'm going to keep this up, I need everything. No blind spots." Rachel nodded, relief and fear mixing. "You will?" Caleb didn't answer with words, just stood. "I've got chores. You stay here with her." He pointed things out: cereal, milk in the cooler, wood out back. Rachel looked like she wanted to say more, but only nodded. Caleb stepped into morning air bruised lavender with fog. Boots crunched frost as he headed for the shed. His mind kept circling Rachel's eyes. Desperation, yes, but also fierce protection. He recognized that look. Loss carved deep and didn't leave easily. Inside, Rachel tidied with practiced speed, but kept glancing at the door like she expected it to explode inward at any moment. When Harper finally woke, she yawned big and rubbed her eyes. "Mama," she whispered. Rachel hurried over. "I'm here, baby. Did you sleep okay?" Harper nodded, then asked, "Is the man still here?" Rachel kept her voice light. "Yes, his name is Mr. Caleb." Harper sniffed the air. "It smells like pancakes." Rachel laughed softly. "I wish." They ate cereal. Harper perched on a stool too tall for her legs. Rachel smiled, but her eyes kept calculating exits, timelines, excuses. Old survival habits didn't vanish overnight. Near late morning, Caleb returned with dirt on his jeans and a basket of fresh eggs, like he'd carried Normal home. "Your kid's awake," he said, stepping in. "She's polite." Rachel smiled faintly. She had to grow up too fast. Caleb set the eggs down. "You can stay longer." Rachel straightened like she misheard. "Really?" Caleb nodded slowly. "But if I'm putting my name on this lie, I need it to mean something. You tell me everything. No secrets, no surprises," he added. "I can't protect you in the dark." Rachel's expression softened. "That's fair." Harper ran up, clutching her rabbit. "Mr. Caleb, do you have chickens?" He smiled. "Had a few. Foxes took most. One old hen left, named Mercy." Harper giggled. "Like church." "Exactly." Later, Caleb brought Harper outside to meet Mercy. Rachel watched from the porch as her daughter crouched by the coop, laughing at clucks and feathered struts. Rachel hugged herself, breath making little clouds. Caleb returned, wiping his hands on a rag. "She's good with animals," he said. Rachel's eyes stayed on Harper. "Animals don't lie." Caleb sat beside Rachel, close, not touching. Pines swayed in the wind. "Why me?" he asked at last. Rachel turned, voice quiet but sure. "Because you listened. You didn't look away." Caleb stared ahead, jaw tight. Rachel asked carefully, "You're not pretending anymore, are you?" His answer came low. "I'm starting to wish I didn't have to." Wind rose, rattling branches like warning beads. Something shifted in Caleb, like his life might be more than wood and silence. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps, too deliberate to be friendly. Caleb froze mid-motion, dish towel in hand. Rachel's head snapped up. Harper kept drawing, unaware that the air had turned to ice. Caleb edged to the window and lifted the curtain a sliver. A black sedan sat out front. Government plates again. He cursed under his breath. "Stay here," he told Rachel, already moving. Her voice went tight. "Is it him?" Caleb didn't lie. "I don't know, but don't open the door unless it's me." He stepped onto the porch and shut the door behind him. Crisp sun, long shadows on gravel. A tall man in a pressed navy suit waited. Leather folder tucked under his arm, hair graying and slicked back. Beside him stood a broad-shouldered woman in her 40s, sunglasses on, posture like authority made flesh. "Can I help you?" Caleb asked, tone flat. The man held out a card. Mr. Caleb Turner, I'm Grant Harlow, Department of Family Services. This is Officer Tessa Mendez. The officer's voice cut in. We got a report a woman and child are staying here. Welfare check. Caleb didn't take the card. You got a warrant? Grant smiled like he'd practiced it. Routine visit, formality. The sooner we speak to the mother and child, the sooner we're gone. Caleb crossed his arms. They're resting. Officer Mendez shifted. Sir, we have grounds to speak to the child. Cooperate or we return with backup. Caleb let silence hang, then nodded once. 1 minute. He went inside and locked the door behind him. Rachel was already standing, eyes wide. It's him. Caleb nodded. And he brought a cop. Rachel's breath caught. What do we do? Caleb's voice stayed controlled. Say as little as possible. Don't lie. Don't volunteer. Let me handle it. Rachel crouched to Harper, cupping her face gently. Sweetheart, you have to be brave. A lady might ask questions. Harper frowned, confused. Rachel kept her voice steady. Short answers, just the truth. And remember, no one is taking you anywhere. Harper nodded solemnly. Okay, Mama. When Caleb opened the door again, his face was stone. 10 minutes. They entered like they owned the air, eyes sweeping, counting weaknesses, the patched wallpaper, the single bulb swaying, the old boots by the door. Grant's gaze lingered on Rachel. Too long. Rachel rose, he said, voice tight. Been a while. I didn't invite you, Rachel replied coldly. Grant ignored her and turned to Harper. Come here, sweetheart. Harper hid behind Rachel's leg. Officer Mendez knelt, voice softer. Hi, we just want to be sure you're okay. Harper crept forward, fidgeting. What's your full name? Harper Grace Rose. Do you feel safe here with your mom? Yes, ma'am. Mendez nodded. Grant's eyes slid to Caleb. And who is this man to you? Harper looked up at Caleb and gave a shy smile. That's Mr. Caleb. He has a chicken named Mercy. Mendez almost smiled. Grant didn't. And to your mother? Rachel straightened, shoulders squared. He's my fiancé. The cabin went silent. Grant blinked hard. Excuse me? Caleb didn't flinch. That's right, he said, voice even. They're staying here while we sort things out. We're getting married next month. Mendez lifted an eyebrow. That's new. Rachel nodded, steady as steel. We kept it private until paperwork was filed. Grant's face darkened. You think this little show fools anyone? Caleb stepped forward, voice ice. You're on my land, accusing a mother of lying to protect her child. If you had real evidence, you'd have a warrant. You don't. Officer Mendez shifted, uneasy. That's enough for today. Grant wasn't done. You're putting the child in danger by involving a stranger. Caleb's voice dropped, dangerous and calm. If something happens, it'll be because you keep showing up where you're not wanted. Grant glared at Rachel. This isn't over. I'll be back. Rachel met his stare with fire. Then I'll be ready. They left, doors slamming, tires spitting gravel. Inside, Rachel sank into a chair, hands shaking again. Caleb watched the sedan vanish through trees. You didn't have to do that, Rachel whispered. Caleb didn't turn. Yeah, he said. I did. Harper climbed into Rachel's lap. Rachel held her tight, face buried in her hair like she could block the world with love alone. Wind whistled through pines outside. Caleb sat across from them, fingers steepled beneath his chin. This wasn't about helping a stranger anymore. This was about holding a line and not letting bullies cross it. That night, the wind screamed louder. The old cabin creaked like it remembered old storms. Caleb sat at the table with a chipped mug of coffee gone cold. Rachel stared at a wall but looked through it, hands wrapped in a blanket pulled tight. Harper slept in Caleb's bed, clutching a feather from Mercy like a charm. They hadn't talked much since the sedan left. Caleb broke the silence. "You okay?" Rachel blinked, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, just remembering." Caleb waited. Rachel exhaled. "When Harper was born, Grant didn't show up. I named her alone, raised her alone. But when I tried to start fresh, he wanted control." Caleb's gaze hardened. "He doesn't want the kid," he said. "He wants to punish you." Rachel nodded. "It's ownership, not love." Caleb leaned forward. "You ever file a report?" Rachel's mouth tightened. "Once. He paid off an officer, called me unstable. Had a psychologist from his circle label me unfit. The file vanished." Caleb muttered a curse under his breath. Rachel looked up, exhausted but clear-eyed. "I don't know why you're helping me." Caleb answered without softness, only truth. "Because I know what hunted looks like, and I don't tolerate bullies." The quiet that followed wasn't cold. It was shared understanding, heavy but steady. Next morning, Rachel woke early to the smell of bacon and cornbread. She found Caleb flipping pancakes, humming low like the sound belonged to the cabin. "You didn't have to," she started. "I was up anyway," he said. Harper ran in barefoot, laughing, chasing a small wooden car Caleb had carved the night before. For a while, the cabin felt like a hidden safe house where the world couldn't reach. But peace never stayed long. Around noon, the phone rang. Caleb checked the caller ID. No number. He answered. A smooth voice slid through, laced with venom. "Enjoy playing house, Mr. Turner. You're interfering. You'll regret it." Caleb didn't blink. "Is that a threat, Harlow?" The voice smiled. "It's a promise. I'm filing emergency custody. 48 hours, then court." Rachel stood in the hallway, pale. The voice continued. "The state chooses stability, not some recluse in the woods." Caleb's reply was calm as a locked door. "Bring more than threats." He hung up before Grant could finish. Rachel whispered, "He's moving fast." Caleb nodded. "Because he's scared." Rachel swallowed. "What do we do?" Caleb's answer was immediate. "We prepare." The next 2 days moved with quiet urgency. Caleb called a retired judge he trusted, Judge Lorraine Caldwell, sharp-eyed, late 70s, a reputation for conscience. Judge Caldwell agreed to meet. On the third morning, Caleb drove them into town. The courthouse was low brick, smelling like varnish and old paper. In her office, Judge Caldwell listened as Rachel laid everything out. Manipulation, threats, custody games, paid opinions, the running, the fear. The judge didn't flinch once. When Rachel finished, Judge Caldwell looked at Caleb. He met her gaze. "I vouch for her with my life." The judge tapped her pen, thinking. "No formal case filed yet, but I've seen Grant Harlow operate. He's connected, and he's dangerous. If he pushes this, you'll need documentation, testimony, and, most of all, witnesses." Rachel's eyes dropped. "Most people are afraid of him." Judge Caldwell's mouth tightened. "Then we find someone who isn't." They left with a list, request records, gather school and medical notes, seek a protective hearing, and file for temporary guardianship naming Caleb as a safeguard. Just enough to slow Grant's legal steamroll. Back at the cabin, Caleb made calls while Rachel dug through old files. She found a buried letter from a nurse who once reported a bruise on Harper's arm. Emails hinting at forged paperwork. Hope flickered. Small. Stubborn. but shadows flickered too. That night, Caleb noticed a car creep down the road. No headlights, tires crunching gravel. It didn't stop, but it didn't feel random. Caleb rose. We need to be ready for anything. Rachel stood, fear sharpening her face. You think he'd come here? Caleb's eyes stayed fixed on the dark window. I think he's already watching. Rachel glanced toward Harper's door. Then we don't sleep. Caleb checked his shotgun, then listened to the wind. Outside, gusts rose through pines, and far down the road headlights blinked once, then vanished into trees. The night crawled forward, heavy and slow, like a storm deciding whether to break. Caleb stood on the porch, shotgun loose at his side, flashlight unlit in his other hand. He didn't need light to feel eyes out there, the way an old soldier senses a trap before the snap. Inside, Rachel paced the living room, nerves fraying with every tick of the clock. Harper lay still under blankets, pretending sleep, afraid to ask why Mama's voice kept tightening, or why Mr. Caleb hadn't come inside. When Caleb returned, he said gently, "You should rest." Rachel whispered, "You know, I can't." Caleb nodded and motioned to the couch. "You sit, I'll talk." He pulled a chair close. I was 20 when I got shipped to Iraq, thought I couldn't be touched. His voice stayed steady, but something haunted it. I came back with shrapnel in my leg and ghosts in my head. I drank 2 years trying to disappear. Then a woman named Nia pulled me out, he said. She taught me hands can heal, wood, patience, quiet. Rachel's eyes softened. Where is she? Caleb swallowed. Cancer. Fast and mean. He cleared his throat. After that, I came here. I didn't want people, but people keep finding me. Rachel managed a thin smile. Maybe you look reliable. Caleb exhaled, almost a laugh. Rachel's voice turned small again. What do we do really if Grant gets custody? Caleb's answer was iron. He won't. Then his eyes sharpened. But we stop waiting. We go on offense. Rachel tilted her head. Meaning? Caleb leaned forward. Tomorrow we drive to Jenkins Hill, a woman named Nora Sanderson. Harper's old daycare provider, Caleb continued. Rachel nodded slowly. Yes. Caleb's jaw tightened. She filed a concern once after Grant dropped Harper off with a black eye. If she's willing to speak now, and she knows a judge is watching, we have leverage. Rachel's fear returned. What if she's afraid? Caleb's voice hardened. Then we remind her what silence costs. Morning came gray and cold, fog curling around trees like smoke. They left before dawn. Caleb driving an old Ford pickup that groaned on the hills but still fought. Rachel sat beside him, clutching a worn folder packed with every scrap of proof. Harper stayed with Ms. Darlene Price, a retired nurse 2 miles down who owed Caleb more than favors. Jenkins Hill was an hour away. The road was empty, but the quiet didn't feel peaceful. It felt like something holding its breath. Rachel stared out at the blur of pines, thumb rubbing the folder's edge raw. Caleb kept both hands on the wheel, eyes forward, planning every word, every move, every angle. Fog thickened as the truck climbed. Caleb didn't speed, didn't drift, didn't give the world a reason to stop them. Rachel finally spoke, voice barely above the engine's rumble. If Nora won't help... Caleb's answer came without hesitation, low and certain. Then we find someone who will, and we don't quit. By the time they pulled onto Nora Sanderson's street, the sun was finally chewing holes through the mist. Her cottage sat, squat and bright, behind an overgrown garden. She opened the door before they could knock, eyes going wide. "Rachel," she breathed, "Hey, Nora, can we talk?" Inside, they settled at her worn kitchen table, while Nora poured coffee, hands shaking just enough to rattle the cups. As Rachel talked, Nora's face cycled through shock, guilt, old fear, and finally something fiercer. "I remember," she whispered. "Harper's arm was bruised. She said Daddy got mad. I documented it," Nora continued. "Filed a report with the county. No one ever came back. Instead, a week later, 2 deputies showed up at my place to remind me who Grant Harlow played cards with." Caleb leaned in. "Would you swear to that? In writing?" Nora hesitated, gaze swinging from Caleb to Rachel. "You really think he'll manage to rip her away?" Rachel's voice shrank. "He doesn't want her, Nora. He just wants to prove he can." Nora's jaw set. "Then I'll testify." Driving back, Caleb exhaled. "One step down." Rachel's grip on the bulging folder eased just a little. "Small win," she murmured, "but still a win." When they pulled into Caleb's drive, Miss Darlene Price was waiting on the porch, mouth tight. "You had a visitor," she said. "Lawyer left this envelope for you." Inside was a thick stack of legal pages, an emergency custody petition already stamped, hearing scheduled in 5 days. Stapled behind it, glossy photos edited to catch Rachel mid-blink and Harper mid-cry, plus a log painting Rachel as a serial kidnapper of her own child. Rachel's hands trembled as she flipped through them. "He turned me into a monster on paper," she whispered, "like I snatched my own daughter." Caleb skimmed the pages, jaw clenching. "This is rushed and crooked. He's cutting every corner he can." Rachel swallowed. "We need real counsel." Caleb nodded once. "I'll ring Judge Caldwell, see who she trusts." That night, silence pressed in around them again, thick as smoke. After a long stretch staring at the fire, Caleb finally spoke. "You ever think about leaving the state?" Rachel looked up sharply. "Running, you mean?" "Not running," he said. "Starting somewhere Grant's name means nothing." Rachel huffed a humorless breath. "I imagine packing up every day, but he'd chase us." Caleb's gaze held hers. "Not if the law backs you." She studied him. "Why are you still here, Caleb? This isn't your war." His answer came low, steady. "Because once you see something this wrong, you don't get to pretend you didn't. I've made peace with the man I used to be. I'm not making peace with letting Grant win." Silence stretched. Rachel's fingers brushed his. This time, it wasn't pretend. Morning yanked Rachel awake. For a dizzy second, she didn't recognize the paneled walls, the scent of wood smoke instead of her pale blue bedroom. Then it hit. Caleb's cabin, borrowed safety with danger on the horizon. Downstairs, he sat in flannel, glasses low, studying legal pages. "Morning," she murmured. He glanced up, offering a brief, warm smile. "Sleep any?" "Better than I thought I would," she admitted, stepping closer. "Thank you for all of this." He handed her coffee instead of deflection. "We've got 5 days, and Grant's not easing off." Caldwell called back this morning. "She's furious this petition slid through so fast," Caleb said. "She's pushing complaints upstairs, but the politics are messy. Grant's daddy used to shovel money into the DA's office." Rachel rolled her eyes, bitterness sharp. "Of course he did. Men like him are born with shortcuts." Caleb pushed back from the table and paced, energy bottled. "But she gave us a name. Defense attorney Janice Rowe. Used to be federal, now private down in Austin. Caldwell says she's razor sharp and doesn't scare." Rachel winced. "She'll cost a fortune." "I'll cover it," he said simply. Rachel's eyes flew wide. "Caleb, no! You don't have to bankrupt yourself." "I'm not asking permission," he answered, calm but unyielding. Before she could argue more, tires crunched outside. A sleek black SUV rolled up, government plates flashing dull. The knock that followed was measured, confident, practiced. Caleb opened the door to find a black woman in a navy suit, badge raised. Agent Denise Carter, Department of Child Protection, Special Investigations. Rachel's throat went dry. We didn't call anyone. No, Agent Carter said. But someone did. Anonymous tip about abusive emergency custody petitions. That's my lane. They let her in. Questions came quick but never cruel. She asked about the bruise from 2 years back, about Grant's finances, about a complaint Nora filed that mysteriously vanished. Then Agent Carter flipped a page. "Who's this listed on Harper's school file as father figure?" she asked. Caleb went still. Rachel glanced at him, then squared her shoulders. "That was me. My idea. We were trying to keep Harper enrolled without triggering another evaluation. She was finally steady." Agent Carter's brow ticked. "So, you're not actually married?" "No," Caleb answered quietly. "We're not. Yet you signed medical consent forms and school pickup slips," Carter said. Caleb didn't blink. "Because I showed up. Every time Grant didn't, I did. I made sure she was treated and safe, title or no title." Carter watched him, then nodded. "We're reopening his emergency petition." "His filing's going before the ethics board," she added. "I can't promise how the court will land, but I'll make damn sure the truth gets there." She rose, closing the folder. "Keep your phones on. If Grant pushes back, you call me directly. We know his history now." When Agent Carter left, Rachel dropped into a chair like someone had finally exhaled for her. "She hits like a hurricane," she said weakly. Caleb's mouth tipped. "Best kind." The rest of the day was triage. Every photo, voicemail, school record, piled while Caleb scanned and backed up everything. By late afternoon, Janice Rowe's voice crackled through Caleb's old speakerphone. Crisp, direct, strangely reassuring. "This is winnable," she said. "But only if you stay ahead. Grant will try emotional ambushes. No public scenes, no social media rants, no panicked texts. You two need to look calm, unshakable." Rachel nodded, throat thick. "What about Harper?" "Shield her," Janice replied. "No unsupervised contact with Grant. If he appears, you call the police in my office. Do not let him corner you alone." That night, Rachel tucked Harper in, smoothing curls behind her ear. "Are we okay, Mama?" "We're going to be," Rachel whispered. "We've got help now." Harper yawned, burrowing into blankets. "I like Mr. Turner. He makes the house smell like firewood and pancakes." Tears pricked Rachel's eyes. "Yeah, me too." Downstairs, Caleb pored over case law, pen in hand, face set. Rachel found him at the table, lit by a single lamp, lips moving silently as he read. She leaned against the doorway. "You never told me what you did before the Army." He looked up. "Mechanical engineer. Spent years designing things I realized were made to break people." She studied him. "Well, you're building something different here," she murmured. "Just so you know." He didn't answer, but something in his expression shifted. Less duty, more quiet protectiveness, like guarding something fragile. Outside, wind picked up. A storm gathered, but for once, Rachel felt prepared instead of doomed. Rain slicked the courthouse steps when Caleb parked across from the low brick building. Rachel sat rigid beside him in a simple navy dress, fingers worrying an old bracelet she hadn't worn in years. "You ready?" he asked quietly. She exhaled. "As ready as I'm going to be." Inside, air tasted like polish and whispered judgment. Janice Rowe waited by the courtroom doors, folder tucked under one arm, eyes sharp. "Filed our latest motion last night," she said. "Judge will read it at recess. Grant's team is pushing hard, calling you unstable and Caleb a shadow influence." She tipped her chin toward Caleb. "You ready to live under a microscope?" His jaw tightened. Let them try. The courtroom wasn't grand, just big enough to feel exposed. Grant sat at the plaintiff's table in a charcoal suit, smirking. Harper colored beside Nora in the back row. Agent Carter sat a few rows behind them, arms crossed, gaze sweeping like a security system with legs. For the first time, Rachel felt the floor tilt slightly away from Grant. The judge strode in. "All rise." 3 hours of testimony and cross-examination spilled out like poison. Grant's attorney, a man named Victor Lang, tried to shred Rachel on the stand, dragging up prescriptions, twisting therapy notes, hinting her connection with Caleb was improper. Janice answered with steel. Medical charts, photos of Harper's bruises, school reports improving after they left, and a vicious voicemail from Grant. Judge Raymond Pike's jaw tightened at the recording, eyes flicking toward Grant with clear disgust. Then Lang turned his aim on Caleb. "You have no legal guardianship, correct?" "Correct." "Yet you picked Harper up from school." Caleb's reply was flat. "Because a 6-year-old was left waiting alone outside." Lang pounced. "Mr. Turner, were you romantically involved with Miss Rose before this arrangement?" "No." "Have you developed romantic feelings since?" Janice rose. "Objection, relevance." Judge Pike's brow twitched. "Sustained." The question still lingered, heavy. Heat crawled up Rachel's neck, and she suddenly couldn't quite meet Caleb's eyes. During the recess, Rachel slipped into the hallway, back against marble, rain tapping the windows like impatient fingers. Her stomach churned. Footsteps approached. "You holding up?" Caleb asked softly. She tried for a smile and missed. "I hate all of this," she admitted. "Every second of it." He nodded. "I know." A beat passed. "He made it sound like caring about you would be something dirty," she whispered. "Would it?" Caleb's eyes searched hers. "I'm not here to be anybody's secret shame. If this is real, it has to breathe outside courtrooms too." Rachel dropped her gaze. "I know. I just didn't plan on any of this." He offered his hand, not romantic, just solid like always. She took it, grounding herself. When they went back inside, Janice stood ready for closing argument, barely glancing at the notes in her hand. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. "This isn't about titles or DNA," Janice told the judge. "It's about safety, patterns, and a little girl who, when afraid, doesn't call her biological father. She calls the man who repeatedly showed up. This court owes Mr. Harlow no unearned redemption." When she finished, you could have heard the clock ticking. Judge Pike called for a recess to deliberate. Out in the hallway, time crawled. Rachel sat beside Caleb, hands twisted together. Harper eventually fell asleep against Nora's shoulder, crayons clutched in her fist, the picture half finished in her lap. An hour later, the clerk called them back. Rachel's legs felt unsteady as they rose. Judge Pike's face gave nothing away. "After reviewing testimony and evidence, emergency custody is terminated. Legal custody of Harper Rose remains with her mother Rachel Rose, unless future proceedings prove otherwise," he ruled. But he wasn't finished. "This court also censures Mr. Grant Harlow for misrepresenting facts. Any future petition without substantial change will be treated as contempt." Grant shot to his feet, face mottled with rage, mouth opening, until Agent Carter stood too. "Mr. Harlow," she said coldly, "a word." The room emptied slowly. chatter buzzing like distant bees. Rachel couldn't move until Harper barreled into her arms. "You're not going anywhere," she whispered, crying. "We're okay." Janice clasped Caleb's shoulder. "You held up better than most." He managed a half-smile. "We're not finished, are we?" "Not by a long shot," Janice said. "But this is one hell of a start." Outside, the rain had stopped. Thin sunlight threaded through clouds like a quiet promise. Caleb opened the truck door for them. Harper climbed in, clutching her coloring book like a battlefield trophy. Rachel lingered on the wet pavement, then turned to him. "Thank you," she said. He shook his head. "You don't owe me that." "I know," she replied. "I still mean it." For a moment, they stood there. Then she reached out and took his hand. This time, by choice. The air back home felt different. Not lighter exactly, but clearer, like the storm had edged away. In the kitchen, Rachel stirred soup, glancing at the doorway every few minutes. Caleb returned drenched, paper bag in hand. "Victory supplies," he announced. "Strawberry shortcake, lemon tea, marshmallows." Harper bolted to meet him, bare feet slapping wood. "Did you get marshmallows?" she demanded. "For Coco or your victory parade?" Caleb teased. "Both." He handed her the bag like contraband. From the doorway, Rachel watched, arms folded, heart more open than it had been in months. Later, Harper dozed on the couch, cartoons murmuring, blanket bunched around her ankles. Out on the back porch, Rachel and Caleb sat in the dim glow from the kitchen window. Crickets sang in the tall grass. "You ever wonder if peace like this lasts?" she asked quietly. Caleb rocked slowly, chair creaking. "I quit asking that years ago," he said. "Now I just grip the good while it's here." Rachel exhaled. "I keep waiting for Grant to pull something." "He might," Caleb said, "but now he knows he's not the only one swinging." Rachel's mouth twitched. "That's not nothing," she said. They fell quiet, the only sounds the rocker's creak and a distant owl. After a while, she spoke again. "I never meant to crash into anyone's life, especially yours." "I know," Caleb replied, "but you didn't push me away either." Her phone buzzed on the table behind them, slicing through the moment. Rachel flinched, dread spiking, until she saw the name. "Nora," she answered fast. "Nora? You need to come to the station," Nora said. "Bring Caleb. I'll explain there." 10 minutes later, they were in the truck. Night had settled deep when Caleb pulled into the sheriff's lot. Streetlights casting halos on cracked pavement. Nora waited just inside, wringing her hands. She led them down a narrow hallway to a back office where Agent Carter sat, arms folded, a folder open in front of her. "You'll probably want to sit," Carter said. Rachel stayed standing. "Just tell us." Carter flipped the folder around. Grainy surveillance stills stared up. Grant leaning into a car window, talking to a man whose face was turned just enough. Rachel's stomach dropped. "Is that Judge Pike?" Carter nodded grimly. "Taken 2 nights before your hearing," Carter said. "We've tracked a cash transfer from one of Grant's offshore accounts into a shell company tied to Pike's cousin." Caleb's hands fisted. "He tried to buy the ruling." "Looks that way," Carter replied. "We're building charges, but it'll take time." Rachel gripped the chair. "So, what does that mean for ES?" "Your case may be reassigned to a new judge," Carter said. More importantly, Grant's cornered. Cornered men panic, and panicked men do reckless things. Assume he's not finished yet, not for a while. Carter closed the folder. "We'll be monitoring his accounts and calls. No contact, no answering his messages. Let US handle the watching." Nora added, I'll park outside your place the next few nights, make sure no one comes sniffing around." The knot in Rachel's chest tightened again. As they stepped into the cool night, Caleb reached for her hand. This time, Rachel didn't hesitate. Back home, she paused in Harper's doorway, watching her sleep, stuffed elephant tucked under one arm. She pulled the blanket up and whispered promises she wasn't sure how to keep. Outside, Caleb stood by the fence, arms crossed, scanning the trees like they might answer back. When Rachel joined him, he didn't speak and neither did she. They stood shoulder to shoulder, staring into the dark, knowing this wasn't over, but knowing too they weren't facing it alone. The next morning came colder than anyone expected. Fog draped the yard in silver. Caleb was already outside with a metal thermos, eyes on the road. He handed Rachel a second cup as she stepped out, sleepless eyes heavy. "You patched the gate?" she said. "Latch was loose." Rachel wrapped both hands around the cup. "You think he'll come here?" "Not personally," Caleb said. "But somebody might. The kind of men who take his money for dirty work don't knock first." That truth settled between them, heavier than the fog, seeping into bone and breath alike. Around noon, a black SUV eased up the drive, unmarked. Nora climbed out first, with Carter behind her carrying a clipboard. "We need to talk," Carter said. At the kitchen table, Caleb at the head, she laid it out. "We traced Grant's calls. One went to Derek Maddox. Former Marine, dishonorably discharged," Carter continued. "Now he works off the books as private security for some very bad clients. We believe Grant hired him to intimidate you." Caleb's eyes hardened. "Intimidate or worse?" "We don't know," Carter said, "which is why we're recommending you relocate, temporarily." Rachel's stomach dropped. "We just got our lives back," she said hoarsely. "I know," Nora replied, "and we're trying to keep it that way." Caleb looked at Rachel. "Whatever keeps Harper safe." After a beat, she nodded. "Where?" "A ranger station upstate," Carter answered. "Off-grid, secure, ours." 2 hours later, the house looked like a storm had passed through. Suitcases half-zipped, drawers open, memories scooped into boxes. Harper peppered them with questions, why they were leaving, why her treehouse couldn't come. Rachel knelt. "It's just a trip," she said, "somewhere extra safe. You remember safe, right?" That night, they drove north in a small convoy, Nora's cruiser leading, Carter's SUV behind, Caleb's truck between, with Harper snoring in the back seat, Elephant hugged tight. Trees thickened along the highway, stars sharpening overhead. The ranger station emerged, a sturdy cabin overlooking a quiet lake. They settled in cautiously. Rachel unpacked kitchen things while Caleb checked locks and windows twice. Carter turned a back room into a command post, laptop, radios, maps. That night by the fireplace, she briefed them on subpoenas, surveillance, money trails. "Grant won't stop unless someone makes him," Caleb said. "He won't," Carter agreed. "But we're stacking evidence. Calls, money, threats." Rachel stared into the flames. "I'm tired of being scared." Nora leaned in. "Then use it. Let fear push you to finish this." Rachel looked at Caleb. He took her hand. "We'll see it through, together." The next few days stretched strange, tight, but quiet. Rachel taught Harper lessons by the window, voice even while her eyes drifted to the tree line. Caleb cleaned out the shed and unearthed a dusty bike Harper claimed instantly. Carter came and went, dropping updates like weather reports. Just before dawn one morning, Rachel's phone buzzed on the nightstand. Carter's voice crackled through, electric. "We got him!" Rachel sat upright. "Got who?" "Pike," Carter said. "He flipped." Admitted to the bribes, the pressure, everything. We have enough to charge Grant with conspiracy, witness intimidation, and fraud. Rachel let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. So it's over? Not quite, Carter replied. Maddox is missing. We think Grant cut him loose as the net closed. He's out there. Caleb stepped into the doorway. So we stay put, he said, until he's caught. Later that morning, they stood on the porch overlooking the lake, fog lifting in soft curls from the water. Rachel leaned against Caleb's shoulder. It's not the end, she murmured. No, he agreed, but it's the first morning in a long time that feels like a beginning. Harper padded out onto the porch, hair wild from sleep, rubbing her eyes. Is it over? She asked, voice small. Rachel crouched to meet her gaze. Almost, baby, she said, almost. Harper wedged herself between them, and together they watched the fog drift away from the far shoreline. Their lives weren't suddenly safe. Shadows still moved at the edges of every plan. But they had each other now, and the truth on their side. For the first time in far too long, they weren't running from Grant Harlow. They were planted, braced, and finally ready. Protection isn't always a badge. Sometimes it's a backbone. If you've lived long enough to watch the country change, good years, hard years, and everything in between, you learn something simple. Safety isn't guaranteed just because someone flashes a title. In Farrell, Montana, Rachel learned that the hard way. A government sedan parked like a threat. A man with a clipboard walked like the outcome was already written, and a 6-year-old girl sat behind glass with a stuffed rabbit held up like armor. Caleb Turner didn't look like the kind of man the system expects to step forward. He wasn't wealthy. He wasn't politically connected. He was a quiet black man in a mostly white town, carrying a 50-pound sack of feed and minding his own business, because people like him don't get the luxury of harmless misunderstandings. Trouble sticks, and it sticks longer when you're the wrong color in the wrong place. But something older folks understand, especially anyone who's raised kids or grandkids, is that when you see fear in a mother's eyes, it's not theater. It's instinct. Rachel didn't ask for a miracle. She asked for one safe day. And Caleb, maybe without even knowing why, offered the most powerful thing he had, his presence. One arm offered, one steady voice, one word, husband, spoken like a locked door. That moment wasn't romance. It was protection. It was a line drawn in dirt. And for those of us who've seen bullies in every decade, on playgrounds, in workplaces, in family courtrooms, this is the reminder. Sometimes the strongest shield isn't a weapon or a badge. It's a person willing to stand beside you and say, "No, not today." The system can be manipulated, so you must build evidence like a wall. Many older Americans grew up believing paperwork meant truth. A record, a signature, a stamp. But you've also lived long enough to learn that documents can lie when the wrong hands are holding the pen. Grant Harlow didn't come to that cabin like a concerned uncle. He came like ownership. He came with a cop and a practiced smile and the kind of confidence that says, "I've done this before, and I've gotten away with it." He tried to turn Rachel into a villain on paper. Emergency petitions, glossy photos captured mid-blink, narratives designed to make a tired mother look unstable. That is how control works when it wears a tie. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it submits a form by noon and ruins your life by dinner time. So Caleb and Rachel did what smart people do when they stop running. They built a case. Not a dramatic speech, an actual wall of proof. School notes, medical records, a vanished report that someone remembered anyway. A daycare provider, Nora Sanderson, who had seen a black eye and watched the county do nothing. And then a bigger turning point, someone inside the system who wasn't for sale. Agent Denise Carter. If you're over 65, you've watched institutions fail people. Maybe you've felt it yourself at a hospital billing desk or a government office. But you've also seen the other truth. Systems can be forced to behave when light is poured on them. Evidence is light. Witnesses are light. A calm, steady lawyer like Janice Rowe is light. And once the truth gets into the record, it becomes harder for powerful men to erase you. This lesson is plain. Don't rely on fair. Rely on facts. Build your proof like you're stacking firewood before winter. Tight, orderly, and enough to last. Real family is who shows up, especially when it's expensive. There's a particular ache older adults recognize, the kind of loneliness that settles in after loss. Caleb carried it like an old injury, grief from a wife taken too fast, years of pretending he was fine. A life built on quiet because quiet hurts less than hope. Then Rachel and Harper walked into his cabin like a storm, and somehow like warmth. And here's the surprise. The pretend part didn't last. Not because Caleb needed to play hero, but because Harper reached out a small hand and offered trust like it was normal. Because Rachel stopped looking for the nearest exit long enough to breathe. Because pancakes in a cedar-scented cabin can feel like the first honest peace you've had in years. In the courtroom, when Grant's attorney tried to smear Caleb, calling him a shadow influence, making Care sound suspicious, something important happened. The judge didn't just hear titles, he heard patterns. He heard that when a little girl was left waiting outside school, Caleb showed up. When paperwork was needed for medical consent, Caleb didn't vanish. When a frightened mother needed one safe day, Caleb didn't step away. Older generations know this truth in their bones. Love isn't proven by speeches. It's proven by showing up when it costs you, when it risks your comfort, when it pulls you into a fight you didn't start. And that's why the ending mattered, even though it wasn't final. Grant got cornered. Bribes got exposed. Threats escalated. The danger didn't disappear. But Rachel stopped running. Caleb stopped hiding. And Harper, caught between them on a foggy porch, felt something children always recognize: steadiness. The legacy we leave is measured in what we refuse to allow. If you're in your later years, you've likely learned that life doesn't become gentle just because we've earned wrinkles. But we also learn something else. We still get to choose what kind of world we participate in. Caleb chose not to look away. Rachel chose to stop sprinting and start building. And together they proved a quiet American truth. Sometimes the safest home isn't the one with the fanciest lock. It's the one with people inside who refuse to be moved. So, let me ask you this. Have you ever had one ordinary day, one unexpected moment, change the direction of your whole life? Maybe a stranger helped you when you were at your lowest, or maybe you were the one who stepped in when nobody else would. If this story moved you, I'd love to hear your experience in the comments, because someone reading may need that hope today. Please hit like if you believe kindness still matters. Subscribe for more stories that lift the heart, and share this video with a friend who needs strength.